And good morning, everybody. I feel like, what do you call it? Good morning, Vietnam. Do you remember that movie? Good
Yeah.
morning, America. It's a beautiful day, eh? And we're heading to the waterfront after. But Rebecca, I wanted to introduce you first.
Okay.
And, she has a video online. It's on YouTube, right? And some of you can reference that later, and I'll send you the link. But Rebecca is formerly from North Bay. Am I right there?
That's right.
And she is an Ottawa-based artist now. She does hand-cut paper collages and encourage viewers to contemplate the natural world and how precious it is. I can't tell you how much that means to all of us, especially amid the COVID-19 pandemic. This was what she was doing. It has become one of the only spaces to find peace and refuge. And we will all say ditto. We need to preserve it. And I like to think my work can remind everyone of that. Inspired by the dreams she has had at the lakeside property where her grandfather lived, these surreal scenes play with scale and hierarchies found in nature. And we see tiny lions perched on a branch, flowers erupting from a stag's horns, rabbits larger than moons, and humans getting lost within dreamlike landscapes. Oh my goodness. That is so beautiful. So Rebecca is an avid reader and collector with a background in art history and curatorial studies. After leaving a gallery position nearly 4 years ago, Rebecca decided to create her own art, making one collage a day for 150 days. By the end of the experiment, a style of her own had emerged, and her unique interest in negative space and intricate detail sets her apart from other collage artists. So welcome, Rebecca. Now you're going to take over from here.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the introduction. So I'm going to share my screen if that is okay with everyone.
Absolutely, and I'm going to bring you up too. Okay.
Share screen. I have a little presentation. So, let's see here. Now, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Before we get started, Rebecca, is today the last day for your exhibit or is it tomorrow?
It is Saturday.
It's Saturday, that's right. Okay.
It's this Saturday, yeah. I have a little bit of information about that I'll share at the end and make sure that everyone knows what's going on. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, well, hello everyone and good morning. Thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to connect with different communities. And like Harriet mentioned, I've been in Ottawa for over a decade now, but I was born and raised in North Bay. And this exhibition that I have at WKP Kennedy Gallery downtown is kind of my first. I mean, I've had work at the Farm Boutique in North Bay, but I haven't had an exhibition in North Bay before. So this is my first time doing that. And it's really nice to reconnect with North Bay and just sort of get to know the art community and the great communities there. So thank you so much for having me. And it's really nice to talk to you today. I apologize if any of this is repeating what Harriet said, but I'll go through sort of the notes that I had to introduce myself. So so my name is Rebecca Clouatre. I am a full-time paper collage artist based in Ottawa. I have very strong connections to North Bay because I grew up there. And I'm a self-taught artist, but I have a background in art history and curatorial studies from Carleton University. And I did an undergrad at Nipissing University in English Studies and in art history. I've been doing collage professionally for just over 5 years, so since early 2017. But I've always been a scrapbooker and a collector. I've always sort of been a hobbyist that way. So this seems like a really natural fit. And I've always loved paper art as well as a medium. And just let me know throughout this presentation if you want me to go back or slow down or anything.
Rebecca, do you want people to ask questions as you go along or to wait till the end?
I have a little section at the end to ask questions, but I'm very open. If you have a question as I go along, feel free to ask it too.
Fine, thank you.
I'm fluid, it's fine. So what exactly is collage? According to Jansen's History of Art, collage is a composition made of cut and pasted scraps of materials, sometimes with lines or forms added by the artist. And there are so many different types of collage, but the kind that I use in my practice and the one that we're going to talk about today is called papier collé or pasted paper. So it's just a very straightforward process of cutting out bits of paper and gluing them to other paper. All of my collages are hand cut and based from what I call original source material. So basically anything paper related that I can get my hands on. So this includes magazines, used books, posters, cards, tags, wrapping paper, really anything under the sun that is paper-based, that has inspiring imagery, colors, and/or textures. A lot of my practice is rooted in environmentalism because I resource and reuse a lot of materials. So my imagery is all secondhand, and a lot of my frames that I use are vintage and rummaged from yard sales and dusty basements, places that, just end up sort of in landfills or thrift stores. So I really enjoy collage as a medium because the tools and materials are simple and non-toxic, and it's an art form that uses waste in creative ways instead of creating toxins and waste.
I'd like to ask you a question here, Rebecca.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, your education is in art, right? So,
right.
Do you need a background in drawing or, composition and all of those things to get started with something like this?
So I have found I don't, because I have a background in art history and sort of the theoretical side of things.
Okay.
That has really helped me navigate the art world. But yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with other artists about this and people in the broader community. And I feel that more in contemporary art, it's less important and sort of an outdated view to think that you have to have a studio background to make your practice work and do something like this. I mean, yeah, I've really hustled and I've been able to make it work without one. And I'm doing what a lot of, professional artists want to do. But having that theoretical knowledge and sort of understanding the industry, I've done a few internships and things as well in art galleries. So I sort of understand that side of it. So that has really helped me.
I'm just looking at your, it makes me feel very peaceful when I see your work, and especially, and definitely connects me to the environment because I see your work shows us the interconnectedness of all things.
Mm-hmm.
And if that was your objective, boy, you're right on.
Thank you.
I like it. I think I would enjoy doing something like this.
You should try. Honestly, it's collage is such an accessible medium, which I really like. It's familiar and it's something that I think anyone could try. And nature is full of possibilities for what you can use for your collages. There's just endless possibilities. So Thank you. Thank you for saying that. But it is definitely my goal to translate how I feel when I go through the process of making work, which is I really want it to be meditative and calming and something that I can really focus in on in a world that's increasingly, where technology is advancing really quickly and we don't really use our hands enough. And yeah, so thank you. It makes me happy that you that you feel that way. Okay, so I just wanted to say it's quite amazing what you can find in your recycling bin at home if you take take the time to look. And I will say that I don't make prints of my work, so everything's original work directly from the original source material. So nothing is digital or photoshopped, and that's just my preference and my practice. But there are collage artists that do digital work as well. But I enjoy the process of sort of, hunting for images and being dictated by the size and colors and shapes that I find. And I really find that's a really important part of my practice. But I know that other collage artists feel differently, and I respect that. But I'm a very old school way of doing it. Okay, let's see. So I'll talk a little bit about the tools that I use. So my tools are also very affordable and eco-friendly. So I like that they're simple, easily transportable, and also don't require a lot of space or any special electricity. Like I think of, people who do pottery, for example, that need access to special electricity to, run their kilns and everything. So it's very simple, very portable. And the process and my practice doesn't really include any harmful toxins or materials. So my most important tool is a good pair of scissors. So fairly recently, I upgraded to this very good quality pair of scissors. They're from a brand called Tools to Live By. I highly recommend them if you're looking for a good pair of scissors. They're very comfortable to use and they have a good grip on them. And they're made from Japanese stainless steel. And they have a Teflon coating on the blade, which means that it's glue resistant, which is really helpful for my practice. I've been using this Fiskars soft grip knife since I started collage, and you can continually replace the blades. So it's just a very sort of standard craft X-Acto knife. I go through a lot of number 11 blades, and I've tried other sizes, but I find that this is the best to get at the tricky parts. Now, everyone can have probably a different preference for this, but I really like that size. I just find I find smaller sizes for blades are harder to maneuver. I always prefer working with scissors versus an X-Acto knife, but there's certain areas where I need to use the X-Acto knife in a cutting mat, but I find I have a lot more control with the scissors. I've tried a lot of different kinds of glue, and I seem to always go back to just simple Elmer's all-purpose glue stick. So they're non-toxic and they dry clear. And I also find that they're the right consistency, so not too wet and not too dry. I find if you have glue that's too wet, it can damage and warp some of your cutouts. And some of the cutouts that I'll use, for example, an image from a National Geographic magazine that maybe was printed in the 60s or something. So the quality of the paper is very different compared to, a very glossy paper that you would see in a fashion magazine, for example. So it's important to get that glue consistency right. And the base paper, so the paper that I glue all of my cutouts to, is really the only thing that I tend to buy new. If I have a chance to get handmade paper, I will. So for example, there's a paper maker in Montreal called Saint Armand. If you're ever there, they make beautiful paper. But I usually end up buying Canson cold press watercolor paper because I really like the texture and I find it reacts well to the glue. So I thought it'd be really useful to start from the beginning and sort of talk about how my practice has developed into what it is today. So I'm going to talk a little more in depth about the 150 Days project. So this is my first collage I ever made. And as you can see, it's very different than what I do now. It's from my first collage series where I decided to make, like as Harriet mentioned, one collage a day for 150 days. So this was back in early 2017.
Wow.
So each collage measures approximately 3 inches by 4 inches. And these base papers actually were left over from something to do with my wedding. I just had these extra cardstock papers. So I was just reusing something in my home that I had.
I love it.
Thank you.
What kind of paper did you say again, Rebecca? Do you
So
use?
this paper that you see in this series is cardstock.
Okay.
But the paper that I use most often now is watercolor paper. And the brand that I would recommend is Canson.
How do you spell that?
Canson.
Okay, thank you.
Or AN, sorry. Or no, ON. I just looked at my
This is very special. I bet you there's a story with each of these cards.
some of them have very specific stories. One of them, I don't know if it's in here. It's not in this these pictures, but one of them is based on my honeymoon when I went on my honeymoon. Yeah, they're all quite meaningful. And then I sort of did little series within the series sometimes. So like if you look at the top left side, there's these teacup ones that I made that were all sort of similar. So I was doing variations of one idea. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, I love it. Any
Thank
comments? Just to stop for a moment. Unmute. I wanted to hear what you think. I want to hear. I just loved your work.
Thank you.
Bonnie?
I find them very ethereal. Like there's so many little pieces in each one. I'm thinking, oh, I hope you can't see my face because I'm right up against my iPad so I can see closer. Like there's little stories all through each one.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is why we have to go see this exhibit sometime before it's dismantled, because you don't really have to say much, Rebecca, but I want you to keep going. but I'm so intrigued by your work. I'm thinking, I want to know the story. You know, I love to know the story behind the work. Very interesting. Okay, go. Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so yeah, they're approximately 3 by 4 inches, so pretty small. And then I documented them every day on Instagram and posted them every day on Instagram.
Oh, gee whiz.
So for me, the purpose of the project was really primarily about self-healing and exploration while doing something meditative. So we're talking about, meditation and the importance of that. So at that time, I was in between jobs, and it was the most free time I'd had in years, actually, after hustling for, a long time, trying to, work to get myself through school and paying rent. And I really just wanted to do something for myself that filled this desire to create that I'd had, I think, inside me for a long time. And it was also, I think really the deeper reason why I was I didn't study art history until the end of my undergrad, and it was just supposed to be an elective class. And then I was so hooked that I took extra classes for my undergrad so that I could minor in art history. And then I said, I can't end now. I have to do a master's in art history. So I just loved it so much and was so hooked. So yeah, it's so funny. I remember back when I was graduating from my undergrad, I remember meeting with a prof that I had a good relationship with at Nipissing University. And I said to her, do you think it would be useful for me to, like, I know, I like doing this theoretical work. I like writing essays and looking at other people's work, but do you think it would be useful for me to do my own work just to sort of understand, you know, more depth behind like what it takes and process and, you know, that creative journey? And I actually remember her telling me that I didn't need to, but I'm so glad that I eventually did. But anyway, I think I've always
I know
known
what you're
it.
saying. It's like having all the theory and not having the practicum or the experience. The experience is such a great teacher.
Exactly. Yes. And there's so many things I couldn't have known that I know now from, you know, reading books about it, you know, and each artist's practice is so different and unique. Yeah. So it was a really good, it's been an amazing journey. I love it. Yes. So I think it's really important that this project was born out of a very personal, genuine, and organic place. Because when I started, I never considered selling this work. So it wasn't my goal, like when I was making the work, to sell it or pursuing this as a career at all. I never thought in a million years that I would become a full-time artist, which I am now. I've been interested in, like I said, interested in art for a long time and engaged with it in sort of from the periphery in a research and historical context. But I never thought that I would be the one making the art. So, and I'll just say a little something, you know, short about how I really encourage projects like this. I was really able to make a lot of progress quickly in terms of my techniques and compositions. It really forces you to sort of exercise that creative muscle and keep it going. And it was a small enough task every day, a small collage where it felt achievable. So yeah, even I think when you're having days when you're not feeling particularly inspired or feeling in the mood to create art, it's good to keep that muscle going, I think. And it's also something that will get you unstuck, I think, if you're looking for inspiration. So here are some of my very early ones. So I realized early on that I was interested in images of women, vintage and celestial objects, and surrealism as a genre. I slowly started to incorporate flora and fauna imagery, and then something clicked and I was hooked after that. I was influenced by so many artists that I'd studied, but also by actually journaling and stationery in general too. I was following at the time on Instagram a lot of bullet journal accounts and things. So just anything that involved working with paper. And then unexpectedly, when I was about 3/4 of the way through the 150 days challenge, the Jealous Curator, so AKA Danielle Crissa, posted my artwork on her blog. So for those who might not be familiar, the Jealous Curator is a very popular art blog that has a lot of followers. Danielle Crissa is a writer, a curator, and an artist that lives on the west coast of Canada, but she works with artists internationally. After she posted about my work, there was sort of this boom momentum that happened. So I went from having my small and intimate audience that was originally comprised of family and friends to all of a sudden having a lot of new followers, and then people asking if my work was for sale, which I had never considered, but I thought, you know, why not?
I just love it.
Thank you. So near the end of the challenge, I started to make collages more like this. So kind of surreal with flora and fauna, central themes, and really playing with scale, and placing images together that wouldn't necessarily belong together. So this is one of the first collages I made after I finished the challenge, and it was really the beginning of what my style and aesthetic would become. And I've just never looked back from there.
Now, can you go back to that for just a moment?
Of course.
Can you just tell us a little, what's behind that? The thinking.
This one, I really just wanted it to be cheeky, and I was thinking about talking about, you know, like hierarchies in nature and playing with scale. I think I was thinking about companions in nature. So having this sort of like monkey and ostrich being a pair, I thought would be, you know, cheeky, but also kind of beautiful. This actually was for a show. I made it specifically for a group collage show that was in Rochester, New York. So I had applied for this group show, and the reception for this piece was really good. I think it was one of the only pieces that sold from the show. Yeah, so it was received really well. And I was really, at this time, I realized that I really wanted to focus on this sort of like playing with negative space and having a lot of sort of concentrated detail in one area, and then having a lot of negative space to frame it. And this, I think part of the reason why my practice has been successful is because this collage style isn't really popular. I think when you think of collage as a genre, you probably imagine something a bit different than this, where people aren't using as much negative space. And yeah, so it was sort of a thematic exploration, but also just composition as well.
How big would that be? How big are your compositions? Are they on the smaller side?
So I would say on average, the size, well, this has changed a little bit since I did the exhibition in North Bay, because I went bigger, but I would say on average for shop updates and festivals and stuff, my average size would be somewhere between 5x7 or maybe 8x10. Those are my two most common sizes.
Okay.
So this one I think was 6x8. Yeah, inches. So pretty small.
Mm-hmm.
I do have some work in my studio right now that maybe I can show at the end, just so you can see scale, because it's sometimes hard to tell unless I'm holding it in my hands, like how small
Okay.
it is. Okay. Now, where was I here? Oh, here. So as you can probably tell by now, I'm so inspired by nature. I love nature imagery because it provides a rich database for what I can use. Nature is all around us and it's universally familiar to everyone, and there's just endless possibilities. I hope that my work encourages people to pay more attention to nature, and I want people to think about my work as a reminder of how precious it is. So I want my viewer to be almost in awe of nature and overwhelmed by it in the best possible way. I rarely use, sometimes I do, but I rarely use large humans. It's always humans are sort of like lost and tiny inside of the nature narrative. So like I've mentioned, I like using a lot of negative space to frame the usually very busy and detailed compositions that I create. So I like sort of that tension. And I was going to say this, but that most of my collages are small and 5x7 is an average size. I love tiny detail that pulls the viewer in and invites you to spend time with the work. So I want my collages to feel almost immersive, as if you could jump into these natural dreamscapes and get lost. And I'm influenced by a lot of different types of imagery. So aesthetically, I'm very influenced by medieval illuminated manuscripts and book illustration in general. Also natural history illustration from the Enlightenment. So you think of things like cabinets of curiosities and figures like Alberta Seba. I'm interested in creating a sense of movement and fluidity. Children's book illustrations are also an inspiration. I love a sense of youth and play, and I think it's important in my work and something that is kind of too often, I think, forgotten about when you're an adult. And my 4-year-old daughter reminds me of this constantly. I like the idea of creating tiny worlds or scenes that can tell a story or be considered a kind of narrative. So I think this is why I often like to use images of people in my work. When I'm not making, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Do you ever use photographs and, like put them on paper and use them if you get the inclination to do that?
So this show in North Bay is one of the first times I've experimented with that, and I'll show you a picture of that at the end.
Okay.
Yes, I've definitely thought about that, because I've been thinking about my practice I think where I've moved to now, because I've explored collage so much in a very sort of pure way in terms of using the original source material and then directly making something from it. But recently I've been thinking more about how I can make my practice more mixed media. So having maybe my own photographs, for example, or experimenting with drawing and painting as well. So that is the horizon. That's where I'm thinking, I think now, because I think I've really thoroughly explored this style that I've done. So yes, but yeah, I will show you. I have a friend actually too. Her name is Alexa Mazzarello. She's a photographer in Ottawa. She's great. And she does portraiture work and photography. She actually did my artist photo shoot. And her and I have been thinking recently about collaborating on a show. And so that would be really interesting because she would, you know, sort of provide the photographs. She's given me a bunch of proofs to play with over the summer and just see where my interests take me with collage. So yes, the answer is yes. Yeah, it's definitely on my mind. Yeah, I'm, you know, always thinking about how I can push it, like how I can do something different. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I had so much time and money and energy to do all the things that I think of.
Me too.
Yeah.
Leaving.
Wouldn't that be the dream? Okay, where was I here? Oh, okay. So when I'm not making a piece, I'm usually cutting and stockpiling images to use for later pieces. So I have hundreds and hundreds of cutouts waiting to be used at any given time. And I find I go through little obsessions. So sometimes, for instance, I'm really into rabbits or a specific kind of flower. I usually have multiple collages laid out at once that I'm working on simultaneously. And unless I'm making a commission, I'm choosing images based on my mood or choosing them intuitively. When I begin a collage, I usually start with 1 or 2 images that have really caught my eye and then build from there. I don't really sketch, but I would say I do more mental sketches. And then I also will lay out all the elements to the piece before I glue it. So that's sort of my sketch, I guess, my layout. So I don't just go right in and start gluing right away. And then sometimes I decide on a specific color palette or an overall tone that I want to convey. I always want to add touches of strangeness or whimsy. And I try to create juxtapositions that are fun and unexpected. So this piece actually was not one that was for sale. I actually made it for my daughter when she was born. And it was influenced by, I did this whole series at a gallery in Ottawa called Gallery 101 as part of a group show called Gatherers. And I made this multi-grid piece that was all about my pregnancy and tracking. So for anyone who may be familiar with this on your smartphone, there's this popular sort of fad right now where women can track their pregnancies and use fruits and vegetables to represent where in the pregnancy you are, kind of thing.
Oh,
so anyway,
yeah.
So when at first conception, it's a banana seed, and you kind of go through the fruits and vegetables. So when my daughter was born, she was a late preterm, which means not super preemie, but not fully cooked either. She was 35 weeks. So when she was born, she was the size of a honeydew melon. So that's what I used as this central image. So it kind of looks like a planet, but it's actually a honeydew melon, and it represents her.
Wonderful.
Yeah, there's a whole series about that on my website if anybody's interested. I thought it would be too much detail to get into today, but. So my practice encompasses a lot of different kinds of work. So my priority is more group and solo exhibitions. I also do an annual art festival in Ottawa called the New Art Festival, if anyone's familiar with that. This will be my 4th year doing it, and it's actually 2 weekends from now. So I'm in the middle of prepping for that. And I'm hoping to do more festivals in major cities. I think Toronto has a really nice one, Toronto Outdoor Art Festival, I think is what it's called. And just expand my audience a bit. because I'm very established in Ottawa, I would say, but yeah, I want to go to other cities in Canada and anywhere else really. I do fairly frequent online shop updates on my website, so I always post about that in my newsletter, and I also offer workshops. And I also receive a fairly steady stream of commission and commercial work requests. So here are a few recent examples, including a business logo for a tarot card reading business that I did a couple of years ago, and then a cover for a local literary magazine called Flow. That was a really great experience. It's always nice to work with other independent artists or collaborate with other local places like that.
That almost looks real.
Where, sorry?
That it looks like I could put my hand up and pick that fan.
Oh, yeah. That's the photo that I posted on Instagram. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Last year, I did a window display for a local boutique in Ottawa called Victoire. So this was quite a large piece. I made the original collage and then got it scanned and printed and blown up for the window.
Wow.
And I'm sorry.
I just said, wow.
Oh, okay. And on the right is a special commission I did for a wedding, actually. A couple wanted a custom ketubah, which is a traditional Jewish ceremonial document. So I'm happy to talk about any of this kind of work in more detail if anybody's interested. Over the last couple of years, my work has shifted and developed quite a bit. So I'm working a little more conceptually now and playing with different layouts and styles. And here are some of the more recent examples. So wreath collages, like the one that you see on the right, is a layout that I do quite often now. This one specifically was quite large, and there's actually 4 more of these that are the same size that are at WKP Kennedy Gallery now. They're about 23 by 23, so that's a bit bigger than what I usually work in. So I'm trying to find ways to expand the scale. And this base paper, this round base paper that is beautiful and has this really nice raw edge on it, was bought from the paper maker I was talking about in Montreal called Saint Armand. So if you ever are there and you love paper, go and check them out. Yeah, it's just beautiful. It's just, you can just tell the difference between, store-bought and factory-made paper versus this paper. There's these imperfections and just these very organic feeling to it that's really special. And if you want to see work that I'm making right now, you can visit, like I said, WKP Kennedy Gallery on Main Street in North Bay to see my largest and most ambitious solo show to date. So this was what I was working on for the last 2 years or 1.5 years, I think. It was a really big undertaking and it was a lot of work, but I think the results were worth it. And yeah, it was quite a journey to get this going. And I not only, expanded my scale and things, I also really pushed the boundaries of kind of the themes I was exploring and tried to go a little more personal with everything. So I'm really, really happy with how everything turned out. And I can't believe it's coming down next weekend. It just came so fast. So the exhibition is called Maternal Collections. It sort of comprises, there's a lot of variety in the show. It comprises some of what I would say is the work that I'm known for. So this like whimsical, playful work, but a little more streamlined in terms of the, sticking to specific color palettes, because I had to think of installations and not just having one-off pieces, which is what I was more used to doing before. And I still do that for festivals and things, but, I had to think about how everything would go together and how I could work with different themes within one space. And that space is quite big. So one of the central topics I was focusing on is motherhood. And this piece specifically that you see it on this slide. So Harriet was asking about incorporating photographs. So this is a photograph that was taken on my husband's phone when Desiree, my daughter, was 1. And it was her first boat ride ever she took in her life on Lake Nosmonsing, because my in-laws have a cottage there in Astorville. And it was a candid shot. And it's one of my favorite photos ever of us, because it reminds me so much. It actually reminds me, if anybody's familiar with this photograph from art history, I think it's Dorothea Lange, the migrant mother. Very different topic, very different subject matter, but in terms of this like sort of strong stance, it reminds me just of motherhood and sort of like braving the world together. And then it being her first boat ride was really important to me because like Harriet mentioned earlier, I did grow up in North Bay and my grandfather had a house on Trout Lake. So the water, just the importance of water and being around that environment, and also the symbolism of water and how that connects with motherhood is really, really, really important to me. So I wanted to include this print. I got it printed by an art reproduction service in Ottawa, and he did an amazing job. It's about 65 inches long, so you can imagine it's quite big.
Wow, yeah.
My father handmade the frame for it, which was really special. And for the hanging hardware on the top and the two hooks that are on the front of the top of the frame, they're actually dock cleats, like what you would tie nautical rope to. Yeah, so we had a really good time trying to solve the problem of how we were going to hang this, right? And so I thought, let's get dock cleats, like as if this, photograph is being tied to a dock, which I thought was really, really good. And the rope is actually nautical rope. And then, so that's the photograph, and it was installed first. And then I cut out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of flowers.
I can see that.
Of all different sizes. And each flower represents the birth month of all of the women in Des's family. So hers is a rose because she was born in June. Mine is a daffodil because I was born in March. And then her 2 grandmothers and great grandmothers as well. So it's all, and it all happened to be within this white and yellow color palette and green color palette, and yellow happens to be my daughter's favorite color. So it just all worked out very beautifully. So yeah, the idea is kind of about the love from the mothers in her family that surrounds her, and it will help her go through life, but also the long and sometimes tedious and hard work, laborious work of being a mother, and how it's, it can be beautiful in its repetitiveness sometimes and tediousness, but it also can be very laborious and time consuming. So yeah, that's, and also
that's amazing, Rebecca. I can't wait to see this.
Thank you.
I'm going though.
Oh, good.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you had this idea of this picture of you and your daughter, did you know that it was going to look like that, or did it grow and evolve as you started doing it?
I didn't know exactly how it was going to look. I knew I wanted it. So the original photograph is color. I wanted it to be black and white so that the colors would show through with the flowers. But in terms of the composition of where the flowers are, that was so this was an on-site installation, which means that it was all it was made there. Like when I came to the gallery, that photo was rolled up. And we had to install it during the week prior to the exhibition opening. So I knew that I wanted it to sort of look like the flowers were being sort of taken by the wind and have this really like organic look to it. But I didn't know exactly how, like I didn't lay out anything before. I did cut out everything before because it would have been impossible to cut out everything that week. And then I also had, I was going to mention, this was unexpected, but it was just so beautiful. And I'm always going to look back on this with such fondness. So when I was installing my brother, who is 4 years younger than me, I have a really close relationship with him. And he also had a really close relationship with my grandfather who lived on the lake. And he happened to be, because of his job, he works contract work, he happened to be free that week that I was installing. So he offered to help. And he's also an artist, by the way. And so I said, like, okay, yeah, that would be great if you could help. I wouldn't have been able to do this by myself. I realize that now. But he actually helped me conceptualize and plan like how everything was going to be stuck on the wall. And he came up with a lot of ideas on where the flowers should go. So it turned into this like really beautiful collaborative project with my brother. And so it just is so multifaceted in how beautiful and like meaningful it is, having multiple layers of family meaning within it. And I had never worked with my brother like that ever before on on artwork, you know, like I've always respected his work and he has a very different style than me, but I never really did that with anyone actually. In my practice, it's always just been like me making everything. So now we're trying to imagine what future collaborations we can do together. So yeah, it was really, really beautiful. So that's my long answer to your question, which is that it wasn't planned, and I wouldn't have been able to plan it beforehand anyway, because my brother had such a creative lens that he brought to it that I would have maybe never been able to do. If you go to the exhibition and you look closely at my daughter's sweater, for example, you can probably see it a little bit in this photo. He put all these small, tiny flowers in detail on her sweater, which just looks incredible and so detailed. And it's not something I thought of doing. And he asked me if it was okay to do it. So yeah, it was great.
Beautiful.
I am just so impressed. It makes me want to go out and do something. But I'm looking at this. It's intriguing how when I look at that, I see the ups and downs of life, and I see a trajectory almost, you know. That's just me. And I'm there's so much in that. That's beautiful. Just beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go see that exhibit so bad now. I wish we could have had you on sooner when you first started, but I'd like to have you back again. So I'm thinking this is something we have. Our theme in the fall is self-discovery, and we're at the village and online.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'd love to follow up with this and do a kind of a little workshop where we all do something and explore our own creativity, which is, you don't have to be an exhibitor. You just do it for your own joy. And you know, I think it might even be therapeutic to do this.
I agree. And I think that there's something very strong about, like, I find the best work comes out when you stay true to yourself and like what really means something to you, and you don't have external pressures, you know, dictating how you do it. I've always tried, one of my mottos in my practice is to always do something that feels right to me. And I think that there's something subconscious that is translated when artists do that people pick up on, that is hard to describe. But I think it is, it's what makes work strong, I think. And I've seen that in other artists as well. So I think that it needs to come from that place. It needs to come from a very personal exploration and something that feels right uniquely to you. that's how this whole thing happened for me, you know, with the project that I did. So yeah.
Rebecca, we're almost, our hour is almost up. I want to
Okay.
find out if there are any questions from the group.
Sure.
I have a question. It's Jill Harriet.
Go ahead.
Rebecca, you've
Mhm.
talked about a couple of times using negative space. What do you
Mhm.
mean by that?
Thank you for asking. So if you look at the so this screen, the piece with my daughter and I, the square piece. So I use a lot of white space, which it is like, so negative space is sort of, I guess, the art term to use for space that exists within a work that doesn't have an image on it or something
Okay.
on it. Yeah. So it's always some, like, sort of, I guess if you were to think of a formula for my work, I always have a balance of negative space and not negative space, or space that's filled with imagery. So if you look at this square piece, for example, it was important for me to have this negative white space around it to create, I don't know how else to really describe it. It's like a balance. Yeah.
And you focus in on what's going on in that piece of art. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, and it sort of helps because if the like, I mean, there's so many different approaches, you know, but that's just my personal approach that works for me. And I think it helps, like the fact that I have so much detail and so much concentration in one area, it like needs that negative space to be able to be like viewable in a pleasurable way, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. Like, this has been almost like a meditation. It's amazing. Do you have any more slides, Rebecca?
Just the dates and times of, so on Friday, I'm at the gallery from 6 to 9. It's the downtown gallery hop in North Bay. It's a lot of places open. So I'll be there. So if you want to come look at the exhibition, I could take you through some more details. I could do a little like artist tour of it if you come. Yeah, definitely open to that if you are free for that. And then the next day on Saturday is the last day of the exhibition, and that there's a free collage workshop from 1 to 3 p.m. You can register by contacting WKP Kennedy Gallery, I think just their general email, and it's for all ages. So I have an activity that will be accessible to all ages that can be approached in different ways.
I want to go to that.
You should.
Did you bring, what tools do you bring?
So it sounds like I'm going to bring glue sticks and all the source material. So magazines and all those things. But the gallery, I think, is providing base paper. We're just keeping it very simple, base paper and scissors.
Okay.
I am not doing X-Acto knives and cutting mats just because it is open to all ages. So yeah, keeping it safe. But yeah, it's just meant to be really therapeutic, and I'm there to answer questions, teach you some techniques as well. There's some collage techniques that I'm happy to share and talk about, and just talk more generally about my practice as well.
Wonderful. Is there I might be downtown on Friday, so I'll get to meet you. So
great.
But I'd like to go to that workshop as well. If anybody else is interested, don't forget to call the gallery, okay? And book your space. Anyone thinking of going right now? I'll go with you.
I want to go to the hop.
I am going to go to that with some friends, I think. So a few things to think about. So Jennifer, again, thank you so much. This has been
Thank you.
Delightful. And thank you to Heather for sharing that information with me so that we could actually have you online. It's just been terrific.
Thank you.
And I hope to, then I'm going to call you about September. We'll talk about that. If there's
Yeah,
something to do online
certainly.
or anything like that. So,
I'm like, my family lives in North Bay, so I'm there quite often.
okay,
Yeah, so that's, yeah, I'm happy to do.
we could have you in person maybe too.
Mhm, mhm.
Wow. Well, congratulations to you. I think we can all get a sense of your passion through
Thank
this whole presentation, and it's just been a joy.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. It was
We're
awesome.
Thank you. Right.
Okay, everybody, well, if you could stop share,
Oh, stop
we'll
share.
go to gallery. There we go. Okay, I'm heading down to the waterfront to do to work in the gardens, but if anybody wants to go down and do a walk and come by and see the sculpture installation is going to happen maybe this week. And the foundation has been poured, and it's going to be very exciting. A first
Where is that
sculpture in about
sculpture going,
40
Harriet?
It's going on the busker stage at U1, between U1 and U2 gardens,
Okay,
the underpass.
okay.
And we're very, very excited about it. This is a clean, green, beautiful project we've had on the books for 2 years for sure. So. And Heather and Rebecca, thank you so much.
Thank
And I'll
you.
see you down at the waterfront.
I
I'll-
will mention, I
Sorry,
just
go ahead.
want to mention quickly, if you can't make it on Friday or Saturday, the gallery is open Tuesday to Saturday from 12 to 4. If you can't make it on the
They
weekend.
can't, oh yeah, that's right, yeah. No, I'm gonna be there, I might be there Friday and Saturday, I'm not sure yet, I gotta check with my friends. But thank you so much, this is just delightful.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Have a good day, everyone.
Okay, just before any of you leave, I'll be sending us in an email. For those who are not going on the mystery tour on June 19th, and for anybody really, we will be having a little informal coffee and snacks at my house on June 15th, 10 to 12, I think it is. Got to look at Bonnie's, I'll send it in the email. And if it's raining, we'll be indoors. If it's not, we'll be in and outdoors. Okay, open house. Bring your own coffee, bring your own snack. If you want to bring something to share, that's fine too, but we wanted to keep it very informal, and you will not leave any food at my house or coffee. Okay, bring your coffee in a mug if you can, yeah. All right.
How many people are going to walk on the waterfront? I know Noreen is, and Rosemary is, and I am. We
Okay.
thought we'd meet at the carousel for anybody who's interested
Yeah.
or able to come.
Yeah. Okay, everybody. Hi, Linda. All right. See you down there.